Hello, everyone. We are here on a Wednesday. Ricky is back with us. He was in SoCal celebrating the holidays last week. And we are here with Bonnie Gillespie, one of our favorite guests. I can say that for real because I love her book, Self Management for Actors. Last time she was on the show, she told me about it, and we actually read it here at the My Press, and we were just like mind blown. So anyway, we'll be talking about that book in a later episode. I won't, kill the mojo on that today. But all right. Well, Bonnie has this great topic for us. Do you want to tell us the topic?
All right. So it's the whole idea, the wheels in the sky, how much data is too much is what we came up with as we talked about the way people will approach astrology and many things woo, numerology, whatever, layering upon layering upon layering upon layers to find an answer to a question. My example was, why am I so exhausted? And they won't decide that a progressed balsamic moon is enough explanation. So they'll go looking for Ferdaria or decimals or perfected rulers or zodiacal releasing. It's like they'll technique on top of technique on top of technique. And while I understand that that's part of what makes astrology amazing, is that there are so many different ways to look at things. I wonder at what point do we go, maybe the simplest answer is the answer. You're exhausted because you're in a balsamic period, or you're in a tough transit. Pluto's opposing your moon for years. It's going to be like that. It got me curious about what amount of layering is good layering.
Oh my God, I'm so into this topic. Okay, I have to tell you, when I went to Kepler College, okay, I have my friend Kenneth Miller. I don't know if you know him, he's a Vedic astrologer, but we would just joke so hard about like, I would be like, I made you a trideca wheel. It's got 30 wheels on it. Here you go. It's like, here's your natal chart in the middle. And then you've got your progressions, your transits, your fixed stars, your asteroids, your trans Neptunians. And then he made this chart where he's like, I made you a chart. It's called the Poseidon Truth Reading. And he's like, here, you can put all these layers on. And he like puts like 50 asteroids on there. And then he's like, or you can just look at your Poseidon. And he like, and so we were joking about this, but this is real. Okay. Like
it's a thing.
It's a thing. Okay. So Ricky, how many chart wheels do you put on the thing?
Well, I want to slow down a little. I want to slow down just a little bit. All right, let me catch up. Okay. So I love the topic, but I think there's a tragic flaw in looking for the answer in the chart. Because if someone says, if we just think logically, if someone says I'm tired because of a balsamic moon, whatever, that would mean every single person having that configuration in their chart is going to be tired. That doesn't check out.
That's right.
Doesn't check out. So I think the missing ingredient is the actual person, is the lived experience. And because to me, the whole point of astrology is to give us perspective on the lived experience. And that perspective is about what is our relationship like to a balsamic moon or to Saturn or to Pluto. Because it's not fair to say that this equals this. It's what is your relationship to this, and the end result of whatever your relationship is to what is going on is the answer to your question. It's always about a relationship.
Always.
And so for me, it's my conscious awareness and my relationship to something that's trying to occur in my life. And typically, if I'm okay with it and I have a good attitude about it, then I'm not going to be complaining. If I'm complaining about it, it's about an adjustment of my attitude to whatever is unfolding. And astrology doesn't give you the answer, but it can point you into the direction where you can where it can help sharpen your focus so that you can see a little bit more clearly.
Okay, Bonnie, I want to take this to another layer. Okay, I hear what Ricky's saying. You got to look at the person. And I'm back to this chart data thing. Okay, so have you ever heard of noise in computer programming?
Sure.
Okay, so what computer programmers deal with, and Ricky is one, but like I'm also married to one basically, is they like deal with all this data. They get like tables upon tables and all this kind of stuff. And anything that applies to the inquiry that they're dealing with or what they're building, they use, and everything else they call noise.
Right.
So, what do you think of the idea that astrologers could hone in on what data we need for an inquiry and call everything else no?
I like that perspective a great deal. I enjoy seeing it as almost like the Terminator comes into the room and is going shing, 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 and sees the scan of all the information on the screen and zeroes in on this is the thing that has my attention right now. And the astrologer has the ability, a good astrologer has the ability to hear what a client has said and then look for why might that feel that way in your experience of living out your chart. Is it a transit? Is it a progression? Is it any other timing technique? And suggest, could it be this? And I guess that there's the ability to discern what is actually going on for the person based on not just what's happening astrologically, but your ability to listen to the client. And like Ricky said, be able to say, why is this person asking this question? Because it's not going to be the same for everybody having that transit or that progressed moon phase or whatever else. And it requires almost like doing a little inquiry with it of like checking. Well, if let's check patterns. I'm a huge pattern geek. So it's, well, did you feel this way 18 and a half years ago? Then let's check what the South Node is doing. South Node visiting your first house. That's a rough 18 and a half months. Maybe. Do you have a stellium in the first house? Then maybe it drains you, Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I like this. And I always tell my students that astrologer's number one tool is your ears to listen. And I'm taking a step further because what I've noticed is everyone is living their chart. And yeah, a step further is when I'm listening to someone, I can see in the chart the words that they're saying because everything that comes out of us has to come from inside of us. And a chart is the map of our insides. So most of the time when I'm hearing someone speak, it's like I'm listening to the chart and they're telling me where to look. And I see, okay, I can hear which part of their chart is talking and I look to see what are the transits and progressions activating that part of the chart and a lot of times I have to say one thing and then they just start making the connections because I've put them in touch with where the problem is coming from. I came up with the term and I call it speaking your chart. And I noticed the way I do astrology, people that don't know any astrology, we're having a conversation looking at their chart and they start speaking their chart. I'll give you an example of it. So I was doing a reading today and the idea popped in my mind about this person's personal philosophy. He had a lot of Jupiter, Sag, ninth house stuff going on by progression. And so I mentioned his personal philosophy. And as soon as I said it, he started talking about the fourth house. He's like, I didn't say talk about the fourth house. I didn't mention it at all. I just said philosophy, and he boom went straight to the fourth house. Right? He has the progressed sun in Sagittarius in the fourth house, squaring the ruler of the ninth and the ruler of the fourth and the 12th. So blah, blah, blah. But this idea of once you put someone on the wavelength, they just they become a clear expression of their chart. Like you said, for an astrologer that has tuned their ability to perceive the astrological energies as they actually manifest in someone's life, not how the books say they're supposed to.
That part. And not how it does in their own life or with the client they had yesterday, or because it's going to be different with every person. And that ability to deal with what is in front of you and not the history of it or what all the books say is, like you said, between your ears, or that's going to be the ability to listen and take that in and assess it quickly and accurately is one of the greatest gifts.
Yeah, I hear what you guys are saying. Like, you got to listen to the client to see. Well, I think that there's something really important here of like, what is the inquiry? Okay, it makes me think of an architectural blueprint, right? Okay, so like, let's ask ourselves a question. Can there be too much data on an architectural blueprint? Yes or no? Why or why not?
So I've got a Jupiter ruled client who is a questioner, if you know the Gretchen Rubin 4 types, and everything starts with a question, and she will always do the most. And I would say my role with her is to help her overwhelm, take away from all the things that she's already throwing on her blueprint. And she sent me a picture of a crystal wheel that she did, a crystal grid, and it had like 300 crystals on it. And I was like, okay, fewer. Like, pick one and put it in your hand, and let's try that. Let's just see what that is, because at some point it becomes not even the most complex jazz, but it becomes all the instruments that ever existed playing simultaneously, and then that is noise. So I think there is an amount of too much data at some point, but it depends on the person, because someone who's Mercury ruled may be able to go, oh no, I want to sift through it all.
I mean, I would argue there's an epidemic of too much data as a symptom of asking the wrong questions. Because if you ask the wrong question, all the data is bad. All the data is too much, and it comes in. And I think this is what Andy is trying to hit on. To me, the most important thing is the query, is the question. Because people ask questions that don't have answers all of the time. Because I think a lot of us are wounded to thinking that there are no answers. And so, right, but we have to make an attempt. And so we ask questions where there's not really a good answer, because the nature of the question is based on flawed assumptions, right? I had a mentor, and he said, no matter how hard you try, you can never make a lie the truth. And this reminds me of when I studied yoga, when I studied Ayurveda, when I studied Chinese medicine. All of them said the same thing, right? Buddhism, all of them said the same thing. The number one cause of suffering is ignorance, right? Is ignorance. And the idea, if you're asking a question you can't find the answer to, of course, you're not going to find a satisfactory answer in simple methods. So you have to keep looking for more complexity. And I think you don't really need much other than a basic understanding of the nature of the 10 planets and the ability to understand and listen to the person's question. And with that simplicity, in my opinion, the answers are right there in front of you. And so for me, it's spending on the time and getting crystal clear on what is the question. Because as soon as you find the question, you look at the chart and you can see it right there in front of you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm thinking about this. Okay, so there would be a case where the architectural blueprint has so much data on it that you can't see or read anything, right? Like there might be a part about the sink and it's not exploded. It's just everything's written really small, and you're like, I can't even see what the sink is going on here. It's like, that's like when you put so many asteroids on the chart that you can't even see the basic 10 planets. I'm like, I lost the chart with all these asteroids, right? And so if the blueprint had a lot of data on it, like a lot of architects could ask different questions to it. Like one could say, like, what's going on with the sink on the 3rd floor? And they could look in there. And another architect could go in there and say, how do I frame this thing? And like, so if we have a chart with enough data on it, then we can ask a million questions at it. So I think it's a both. Like the data shouldn't inhibit us from working with the blueprint well, but if there is too much data, it really does.
Well, but it's also like, if we don't know someone's birth time, they're not inhibited from getting their chart accurately read. It just has less data to it. And so we're not given all the information, and it still can be enough. Like we're able to do a lot with a little. And then because we can do, like you said, all the asteroids and all the fixed stars and all the, like, absolutely, we could crowd it with a lot more data. And then the question becomes, are we served by that? And I think this gets back to Ricky's asking the right questions. There's also an idea of, we outsource I call it enoughness, but we outsource so much of our self-understanding, our self-compassion, our grace, because we're taught we have to go get it from a product or a certain structure system that exists out there outside of us. I mean, that's welcome to capitalism. But there's this whole idea of, could I just trust what my gut is telling me? And that's also something that we can look for in the chart. If someone says, I want to trust myself more, we can say, well, start by stopping looking when you found something that could be the answer to your question, instead of continuing to look, but what else can it be? What else could it be? Because that's when you think of it like an epidemic of overwhelm and overwhelming amounts of data, for me, it's people who want to go, but what else? Could it be this? Could it be this? And I'm like, it could just be the state of the world right now. Like, it doesn't even have to actually be a transit at all, as much as it is just, this is how your experience is going right now. Yeah. And it just can be exhausting after a while. And I think that that's when people overwhelm themselves rather than get overwhelmed by astrology.
I don't know. I believe that if we look for something, that we'll find it. And so
I can find an answer to anything chart, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, but because I know this. I know, and we all know what we're talking about, because we have these people and they're seeking something and they keep looking and looking and looking. And I want to honor the fact the reason they keep looking is because they're not finding what they're looking for.
Sure.
You know? And that's why for me it comes back to truly understanding the question. And sometimes we get fooled into the words that are coming out of people's mouths, and it's difficult to listen more deeply to where in the chart is this question coming from. So very often in a situation like this, I'll point out that the person doesn't believe that there is an answer. And then the seeking and the searching, it stops immediately, because they sit there and they have to think about that. And then they're stuck wrestling with that over and over again until they have an awareness, and then we can start to get somewhere. But there's an initial wound, and I think because astrologers, we all take on the pride of having the answer, is that we get tricked into it too, of searching for the right answer. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? But I think the thing we have to do is we have to first get the client to finally ask a question.
Okay, I'd like to say a few things. Sorry, I have a lot to say on this one. Okay, so I love what you're saying, Bonnie, about charts without birth times. In this case, we need to look at what do we know that we know. Okay, so what we don't know with that is we don't know the houses or the ascendant, and we don't know the moon degree, because with the waffling, birth time, the moon could be within 13 degrees of span, right? So we can say, I know your sun sign, I know your Mercury degree, I know your Venus degree. These are the things that we know that we know. And in fact, without a birth time, we can have very strong data as long as we have these columns of what we know and what we're not sure of, and that is really strong data. Second of all, I think there are waffling calculations that overwhelm astrologers. The lot of fortune. Is it the sun to the moon and then from the ascendant, or is it the moon to the sun? Is it the sun, the right or the left eye? It flips in ladies sometimes. Like, there's all these. If you relocate your chart, you have waffling data. So I think waffling data deteriorates the efficacy of astrology to be studied scientifically. And when I take issue with things like zodiacal releasing and the length of life calculation, which are based on waffling data. You're starting with like the lot of spirit, which we don't know if it's sun to moon or moon to sun. Like, I'm sorry, but you're basing a whole thing on this waffling thing. And so I think that's another thing that overwhelms astrology and makes it seem weak in a scientific realm, is waffling data. So I just want to put that out there.
What I would add to waffling data is a student learning astrology, and they read one book, and they read another book, and they read another book. And if you're reading closely, as far as an interpretation of what is the planet, what is the sign, et cetera, it's waffling data. And and I think you're a great person to ask this, Andy. Is like, what do you find across the history of what we know about astrology is the most stable data?
Yeah, like the bounds, not stable at all. There's two systems for bounds, which I wouldn't even use bounds because of that. But the basic, whole sign house basic template plus 10 planets plus transits to those planets, the most adherent structure, even in Vedic or Western, your aspect infrastructure stays the same. So even if we get a waffling zodiac data, we do not have a waffling aspect infrastructure. So just aspects and transits to them are the backbone of astrology. I want to hear what Bonnie had to say.
It was just gonna be that, like, when I look at things like different groups, organizations that have lots of teachers, lots of methods that they cover, a lot of astrology schools, I think one of the things that becomes encouraged is for the instructors to have some unique thing that is theirs. And I think that's where we really get into the overwhelm is I'm going to be the specialist in Ferdaria. I'm going to be the specialist in the zodiacal releasing from this lot. I'm going to find this other lot that we weren't even using, and I'm going to use it. And that's going to be my specialty. And I think there's this, it's almost like a tenure trap in grad school. Like we've got people looking for what is that thing that can become mine so that I can publish, so that I can have my unique brand of whatever it is within astrology, rather than just good old fashioned, like you said, 10 planets, 12 houses, right?
Mm.
But I've yet to see a master of the 10 planets. Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. And that's my issue. Someone wants to talk about their Chiron or Pallas Athena, but they don't even really have a sound understanding of their sun, their moon, and their ascendant. A sound understanding, because to me, I believe if you have a sound understanding of one powerful element in your chart, it actually makes all the other ones make sense to you.
Agree.
Because they're all existing in relationship, and I think that's the true. We're integrated beings, and this path towards integration, I think it should start. And I'll be extreme based on this conversation, but what you just said, Andrea, about what is the most stable? What if we stuck to just that and became masters of that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's when I go, well, that's where we now have people using AI to do their charts. And I'm like, that's where we really get into a whole, like, are we doing meme astrology now? And that's what becomes the stable. And so everybody wants to be able to do something a little different, a little like, this is why you want to keep it human. But where do we get the ears for, let me know if I'm actually even dealing with someone who's asking the right question. Yeah. And technology can help to a point. But.
Well, I mean, I think at this point in time, I think a well-trained large language model is better than 99% of human astrologers. A well-trained.
That's a hot take.
I'm working with AI and astrology, 6, 7, sometimes 12 hours a day. It's not coming from a guess or
but who's cuter? Come on. Bonnie and I are cuter.
because I say a well-trained, right? Because most astrologers, right, and this is my opinion, is especially compared to a model, is they're intellectually lazy. And because the same issue we're saying is they get overwhelmed with too much data, where the computer can store more data and work more logically than most humans. And if you really train it well on the 10 basic symbols, it proves how simple the system is. And humans have the natural tendency to make it more complex. If you train a model, if you train a computer, it won't do that. It won't.
Okay, one of the problems I think is research design in astrology. Okay, I'm looking at like what Bonnie's saying about everyone creating their own system and then to get notoriety and all this kind of stuff. We're a bunch of rogue scholars out here, which this is how we get our funding, is to sell our own books and things like that. Okay, but have these people tested their methods in a court of law scientifically? No, they have not. Like Robert Blaschke, I remember he had that book, bless his heart. He did great work in tertiary progressions, all these progressions. It's like, have you really tested these in scientifically? And I think if we look at astrology as a technical philosophy, it's irrefutable. And we can say that all these things can exist at the same time because they're just philosophies, right? But if we're going to go into the scientific realm and we're going to really try to test these things out, it's like then we get back to, can AI design a good research method for things to be testable? The thing is, we get all these confounding variables. When you guys are talking about, like, I'm looking for tiredness, and I see it here, but I also see it here, but I also see it. Now I have a bunch of confounding variables in our scientific research, which just deteriorates, astrologers back into like woo-woo drooling babies in their cereal. I mean, like, this is the thing is, I don't know if AI or any human has really designed research methods that really work for astrology to really handle this data.
I'm working on it. I am working on it. Yeah. Well, because the beauty of it, so on the apps I built, right, there's a section where people can go back and review important events in their life. you know? And so if you have the ability and you have distribution to get people sharing when things actually occurred in their in their lives, and you have the natal chart and you have the transits and progressions for when that occurred, you can start to amass data where we can start to see what are the constants. 80% of the time when this occurs, right, we notice this is going on in the chart. So yeah, we're getting there, and to me, I can't help but have an open mind towards these things, because like I the way I study, as I've realized, in order for astrology to work, is I had to find something that was simplistic enough for my Mercury and Taurus to be able to grasp and work with. And at the end of the day, the 10 planets and the 12 signs and 10 aspects, oh wow, right? It's, to me, I can answer anybody's question really quickly by following very logical steps. And I call what I do astrologic, because there is a logic. But I think the biggest issue, and most people don't believe that they have the ability to know certain things, that they have the ability to have that kind of clarity. Because, right, if we did, we'd have to acknowledge, well, we've all been wrong for so long. And so,
Bonnie, how many wheels do you use in your practice? Like, what is your regular look at the data?
It's almost always one. I will throw on a second one just to see what the current transits are, but I almost always can find the conversation we're having in the natal chart, because it's a relationship with their birth chart that they are always negotiating. And so, yes, I can throw on the transits. I can go to a table and look up where we are by any of the timing methods that exist, and say, okay, so we may be getting a little more highlighting on this planet than we normally do because of this perfected year, or because of where the progressed moon has made its way to, or whatever. But for me, it is almost always something in their natal chart that is speaking up. Like when Ricky was talking about watching and hearing someone speak their chart, for me, it's a visual. Like I see their chart. I see visually colors going when they're saying certain things. And I go, oh, that's their debilitated Venus that's having this conversation with me now. Oh, they just had that conversation with me from their Mars. And so I find that's the real root for probably 90% of the time I'm working with someone. It's one wheel.
Yeah, I'd say almost exactly the same thing. I'll put up, because even if I'll put up transits and I'll put up progressions, but they're really just giving me information about what in the natal chart is getting the most activations. But even so, I teach a transits and progressions class, and the first thing I do is I put in the natal chart and I say, what are going to be meaningful events in this person's life? So it's, and every single time, right, the students, they point to the event that I'm going to show in the person's life. So they see the future activation inside the natal chart. So I think that's the key point I think we're both trying to make, is this is the working document, right? Is the natal chart, and the other charts are just giving us information about the natal chart.
Yeah, someone got obsessed about a solar return chart, and I was like, your solar return, see that as just sunglasses that your natal chart put on for the year. It a little shade, tint, color difference, but it's not changing who you are. Same with locational astrology. Like, yeah, it's going to create something that is worn over this shoulder instead of that shoulder, but you are still you.
Oh my God, I'm so happy. First of all, for everyone who's listening, we have a really good crew here. Feel free to put a question in the chat if you have a question for these guys. Bonnie, okay, you just like melted my heart with love. I have to show you my dragon again. Okay, that's how happy I am. Because people always make a new chart for themselves on the solar return. And from a teleological perspective, upon which ancient astrology was built, that is an error in analysis, because we are supposed to be manifesting our manifested thing, our telos, our natal chart. That is what we are doing. And the solar return, if you make a new chart for yourself on the year, you have swayed from your manifestation. And that is an error. Right. So like I love that analogy, but it's like putting on the solar return glasses, and that's a tint. That's beautiful.
That's how I see Profections, Ferdaria, like each of the techniques. I go, that is a color that can get added. That's a filter that can go over the lens, but none of it changes what's inherently in that natal chart.
What's Fedaria?
It is an ancient Persian technique and Fedaria just means, or Fedar means era or block of time. And it breaks down your life into chapters ruled by planets and then sub-ruled by secondary planets. And it goes through Chaldean order.
Is that like dashas and bhuktis in Vedic?
Yeah, it's very similar.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I don't do Vedic, but
parallel structures. Yeah.
Okay, I want to bring up another question for y'all, which is, okay, we could say that astrology is an act of looking at the data and then a choice to convey what we see. Okay, here's an example of this. When people have a baby and they're like, this will be fun. Why don't you look at their chart and tell me what you see? And you see like 13 T-squares, and you're just like, like, what do we look at in the data and then what do we convey? And how much is that a choice?
I think that depends on the astrologer and their philosophy about their attitude and philosophy about what their role is. I mean, to me, I view my role as a translator. And to me, my job is to listen to the question, see what I notice, and share. But the main thing for me is I'm taking what to share based on my best attempt to hear and answer the question.
Okay.
Bonnie?
So for me, I have this concept I call the life car. And the life car is driven by your rising, navigated by your sun, and the backseat driver, making sure everybody's needs are met, is the moon. And your chart ruler, so the rising signs ruler, traditional ruler, has a lot to do with how this car gets driven, what kind of car it is, what the music that's we could say Mercury is the music on the playlist. We could do all sorts of other planets in there, but I like to use the big three as the life car, and the chart ruler's position in the natal chart as the main parking lot that car goes when it's not navigating around your whole life. So for me, it is, I want to take a look at what's the condition of your chart ruler? How's it doing? Does it need some support, and can it get the support from within the life car? And once I've answered those questions and can get someone kind of on the road in that metaphor, I find that gives them a tool that they can play with, and also gives me something that answers many of the questions of what's happening in their lives or as they're living out their chart.
Wow. I love
Wow.
your
Well, I don't know. I just find that's tough for me because there's a lot of assumptions and biases in that approach about the importance of certain things.
I'm not saying importance, but I'm saying it's kind of like when you've got a highly angular chart and you're like, these things on the angles are going to have a lot of influence. They're going to be a part of the conversation. Again, that's also an assumption, but
No, that's a fair, to me, that's a fair assumption that's rooted in things that are stable. I guess my biggest thing is one of the things that when we talked about what is stable in astrology, one of the things that we have to say is stable are aspects. Mm-hmm. And so any approach to, this is what I'm learning, any approach to a chart that doesn't take into account aspects is missing one of the most stable things that we have to work with. And I noticed that students, for some reason, they seem intimidated by aspects, but I think aspects are the most intuitive, natural thing to understand in a chart because it's about relationships and the idea of how two things can potentially affect each other. And so one of the things that I tend to call the way I use the term chart ruler typically is the planet that is the most aspected, right? Because but by definition, by what is stable, that's going to have more influence than the planet that rules the ascendant.
Yeah. And I mean, there can be loud planets all over that are not a part of that life car choice that I've made. But there's something about having but this road trip is going on, and the relationship between the trio on this road trip
Imagine you're one of those people where that strong planet doesn't even get mentioned in a reading because someone is following this path. Those are the ones that my heart goes out to, because
Right.
even if they're working with a really good astrologer, they feel more lost. And I think these are the ones that keep looking for this technique and this technique and this technique, the people that we're making fun of. But I think the reality is they're doing it because we're not doing a good enough job serving them.
Not making fun of him. Not making fun of him. Just
No. I'm making fun
noticing
of them.
him.
I'm making fun of them. Sorry, I'll own it. I'm making fun of them because I have no point. I have no problem making fun of people.
All right, I think we should throw some inquiries at a chart and see where you guys look at the data. Okay, so let's say we had a couple and they said, we have a domestic violence problem and we're going to have to split up and get a restraining order if you can't help us. All right, where do you guys look? What do you look at?
The first place I would go is, I am not the one to talk to about a domestic violence problem. Like that is too big for my comfort level. If we're actually talking physical violence is happening, I know what you're asking, but I'm like feeling myself go, oh, that would be too scary, because that I don't want to rely on astrology for answering that question. Like that's like people are physically in danger.
What if they've consulted every other professional on the earth and no one can help them, and maybe you can help them?
Ooh, I'm so triggered right now, because to me, if there's a question we're not willing to at least run through the astrological filter, then we should waste it. We're wasting our, my opinion, we're wasting our time. To me, if I'm sitting there, and again, I'm a messenger, so for me, we'll call it karmic or fate or whatever, but someone has showed up in front of me with some query that they're putting in front of me. And so for me, I feel it's my honor and my duty at least to run it through the filter. And if I run it through the filter, what comes back is alarms, and that's what I'm gonna share. But to not even apply the filter for me, I feel like, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Again, that's just me.
No, it's more my comfort level with just thinking of clients who have been in precarious and unsafe positions, and how I am very quick to say, let's make sure that you are safe. Let's make sure that you're in a situation where you feel physically okay. Maybe talking to me doesn't need to be the priority right now. And so that's me bringing my own baggage to the conversation more than me thinking about it astrologically. But I do what you're saying.
You're both acting ethically, actually, because Bonnie is using the ethic of accepting only jobs of which we are qualified, and she's saying, I'm not qualified to answer that, which is good ethics. Ricky is using the ethic of duty to warn, which I work with a lot. Like I do a lot of inquiries that people think I shouldn't. I'm like, I have duty to warn. I can actually see this in the chart. I absolutely have a duty to say something. So you both are acting ethically there, and you both have a defensible position.
Sweet. So for me, and when I say listen, hopefully this is useful for people that are studying astrology, is the value of learning astrological keywords is because those are the words that people are going to use, and it's telling you what to look for in the chart. So specifically, the way I think of the moon, I call the moon the domestic urges. So if I'm talking to someone and the word domestic comes out of their mouth, I have zero doubt in my mind that I'm looking at the moon. Zero doubt. And if it's a couple, I'm looking at both of their moons. I'm looking at the composite moon. I'm looking at inner aspects to the moon. I'm looking at the houses. I'm looking at the moon, right? And I don't have to look for it. I know if that's the question that's coming out of them. When I look to the moon, I'm going to see Aries and I'm going to see Mars. Right? Or one or both. Zero doubt, because the only thing that can come out of us is what is inside of us, and that's what the chart shows.
Okay, I'll take a stab at this one. If I was asked about domestic violence, I would absolutely be looking at their Mars. I'd be looking at what does each natal Mars look like? Who might be the culprit for the more aggressive side of the equation? You know, I've had couples where they both had Mars at 13 degrees, and I was like, you're both the problem. You're both erupting at the same time equally, actually. And then maybe in the composite, we see some martial issue or something like that. Then I'm also looking at the data of when are we going to erupt in the future? So I might be looking at the transits of Mars exacerbations or something like that. But of course, I'd also look at the whole chart. But I guess my point of me throwing a specific inquiry at you is to say that we have this whole architectural blueprint with all this data on it. And like if I asked you as an architect, what's going on with that third floor kitchen sink? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you're looking at the kitchen sink on the third floor, and it seems really easy to understand in an architect's situation. And I think astrologers, it could be like that too. Like, I got all this data, I got 13 wheels, but I got an inquiry. All right, now I can hone right in on this thing, and then that actually helps us,
Yeah. I mean, I teach a 5-step process, and it's about training astrologers' ears of like for me, 85% of the time, maybe a little bit more, when someone has a query, it's usually about a house. There's certain questions that are more planetary questions, but the majority of questions are house questions. And so the first thing I tell my students is, what house is this? And if you don't find a house, then go to, okay, what planet is this? And if someone says domestic, okay, because I call the moon the domestic urges, I'm going straight to the moon. And when I go to the moon, right, so step 2 is, if you go to a house, what house is it? And you identify the house. The next question, what planets rule this house? What planets are responsible for the things that are going to go on in this area of life, right? And then the next question is, what is the natal condition, right? Looking at the whole chart, what is the natal condition of these planets, okay? And then next, which one of these planets are being triggered by transit or progression? And there you can get from a query to specific data about the natal chart. And you'll pick up the themes before you even get to the final question, because you have the kind of specificity that I think you're talking about, Andy.
It's a really good analysis, Bonnie.
Well, I keep coming back to, by the time something has gotten physical, assuming domestic violence means physical, and we agree on that phrase, I'm like, for how long has there been mental abuse, emotional abuse? How long before things got Mars were they hella Mercury or even something outer planet being nefarious in there? Did it just begin? Did it just begin after we've been together for a long time? Now there's a thing going on. I'm like, I'm going to want to look at what changed by all the timing techniques, what got us into a neighborhood that we've not been in before, but also we didn't just suddenly wake up and have domestic violence. What is it that happened before? There's going to be so many different places to look for a third floor sink problem. Is it a plumbing problem? So I actually need to go look at pipes in the basement? Or is it
I disagree.
That's a really good analogy. I agree.
I don't know. I think it's like this, right? Is that we act like things happen to people. That's not accurate. Everything that shows up in our life emerges outside. It comes from us in the sense of we attract it to us. So if someone has a domestic violence issue, it's going to be in their natal chart. And yeah, we can talk about why it's being triggered now, but if we go to the natal chart, we're going to see a story where this person has an attachment to the idea of domestic violence. It's so specific. Right? It's something, that idea of a pattern of having some kind of violence to the people that we are supposed to take care of or are supposed to take care of us. There's a pattern there, and you're going to find that pattern, I guarantee you, by looking at the person's moon.
It's more than just the moon. And the word domestic, it's actually violence. It's not domestic. If you said, what are your domestic inclinations? That's different than saying, are you violent? I mean,
domestic means, when I say domestic, it means experiences that arise related to people who we could consider family. When we say domestic, it means, what are the things that are part of our domicile, the things that we feel a certain kind of responsibility to take care of. And so it's a specific kind of violence that erupts in that context. And you're always going to see clues when you look at the moon. And this is the point we're trying to make. I'm trying to show you how simple it is, and no one's even willing to experiment and see if I'm right.
Because I agree with Bonnie that you have to ask more questions. Like a doctor does this all the time. The doctor says, How long have you been having symptoms? Are they recurrent or cyclical? I agree that sometimes we have, or you can't just say it's one thing. You have to ask a bunch of questions.
I'm not saying it's one thing, but I'm saying the whole point of our job is to listen to the question and provide a response. And when someone says that it's a domestic issue, they're telling you, look at the moon. That's what they're saying. And when you look at the moon, you're going to see a story. You're going to see a dynamic where it might help to ask the questions, but sometimes you don't even need to because it's so obvious.
Well, I would agree that the moon is one data point in this query. All right, Bonnie, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of arguing the same thing from a different direction, is that you do for me, I have to look at what got activated. What is the activation to the natal chart? Like, it's not that I'm moving away from the natal chart to get the information as much as why now? What got activated? What suddenly shifted that caused something to open that wasn't opened before? And that opening up of something in the natal chart happens by activation or timing technique, right? Or do you not think that?
I absolutely agree. We have to look
100%.
at timing. When was the onset of the violence?
But we're looking at what opened, right? So, and we're saying the same thing.
That's
what I was saying. What gets activated is a pattern that's been there their whole life. Maybe it's a different version of it. But to me, if you go to the activation and you don't understand this person's moon story, you're going to lose context. If you understand the person's moon story, you don't even need the activation because it's obvious. This is the thing. People get into astrology and it blinds them to certain things that are obvious if you just listen to the person's experience. And I'm saying and I'm only speaking from experience of seeing many people complicate astrology. And to me, I'm telling you, it is. And I thought this was the point of it, and we're all guilty of it. But I think we should all be moving to the simplification of it. And at least my offering is if you use the keywords that people say that you spent the years studying astrology, you'll know exactly where to look for the answer. That's the only thing I'm trying to say. You got to look here and you got to look here and you got to look here. The whole idea is to find where's the one place that I can look.
Why would you only look at one place?
Because that's okay. When I played football, okay, it's something I learned.
I agree with Bonnie. The kitchen sink might have a problem out on in the lawn.
I'm not arguing against that. I'm saying if your mind goes to look for what this way, you're not going to find it. If you look for the one thing to look at, it's going to tell you what to look at next and what to look at next. You're going to find the feel of it. You're going to find the scent. You're going to find the path. But people are just looking for is this, and this, and this. If you know the one thing to start with, it's going to lead you down the path where you're going to find your answer.
I think it really depends on the inquiry. I really think it depends.
But to me, this is antithetical to the whole point of what this topic is about, of people looking too many places. And to me, the opposite of too many places is knowing where is the first place to start.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You can hone it down. I like your point there of, and I'm never trying to agree or disagree with you, Ricky. We're just talking around a topic. Like, that's not the thing. But I do think you make a really good point there, is that we can hone in. Like, if we're looking at the kitchen sink, we can look right at the sink. You know what I mean? And then go from there to check other things.
Otherwise, we're not ever going to find the problem. But if we can really understand what's going at the sink, we're going to get clear of how it's connected, where it's connected to something else. And I think this is the key to simplicity, because there is a lot of data. But if we don't know how to weight what data is important, what's relevant and what's not, that's where we get confused. And
I do have to say, if someone asked me about the kitchen, asked about the kitchen sink, and one of my coworkers kept looking at the third floor closet, I'd be like, "Who do you think you are? We are talking about the sink."
Exactly. And that's what I say to my students every day, right? How did you get over there? We were just right, but it's like they noticed something that they read in a book and they feel like they can say talk about intelligently, and so they jump there. And I'm like, but it has no relevance to the question the person just asked.
Well, and I'm never going to undervalue the moon. I am a huge moon fan for almost everything that could make us feel better, because it takes care of how we feel safe, how we get our needs met. I mean, absolutely. That is a very important place to look. I'm just fascinated by the start there, because keyword, rather
Because
than
but that's
no,
the whole point.
Let her finish.
I sorry, I thought she was. Sorry.
No.
it's fine. I just rather than looking at what just opened that up. And so I mean we may end up at the same place, but I'm fascinated by the I'm not going to actually look at what has happened recently. I'm going to look at the natal first. I love it. It's just a totally new approach to me, and I think that's kind of your point, right?
Yeah, that is my point. But it reminds us of how simple it can be. But our
Sure.
habits of entering a chart only reinforce complexity. And even when I offer simplicity to astrologers, all of them fight for complexity. All of them, right?
Well, I want to offer one
Without any backing, which is to me is mind blowing.
I want to offer one simplicity, which is the explosion of a chart. Now, one of the things architects do is explode a building into something called an exploded axonometric, where they put one level on each piece of paper. And so I wanted to learn for simplicity's sake that you can explode a chart and put one aspect on each wheel. And so I always draw these up. If people ask me about their bipolarism, I put one aspect of personality on each chart, and then we start. Without an explosion, I think we get lost in the data. And so I really want to encourage people to parcel out charts into different pieces. Another thing we can use for data is like the physical maps. Like here's a dermatome map. Is like you can actually draw the chart in the physical body, which is a whole different diagram. But sometimes the inquiry, so I think a lot of it's like getting the correct diagram that can help us convey also an inquiry. Just want to put those out there.
Yeah,
great tools.
Yeah, you meant. I feel like I spend all my time building astrological tools. And the idea of I really love the idea of the exploded chart, and I want to talk to you about designing a tool that makes it easy for people to be able to do.
We should do that and have it in your app because there is not an app that has an explosion yet. And of course, of all the app makers in the world, like you're probably one of my better friends. I would rather work with you. But I do think that should be in an app.
Yeah.
And it would make that app distinct because a lot of the apps repeat the same functions and this one doesn't.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen?
Here, I'm adding it. There we go.
All right. So I think this is sort of along the line, but I started working on this to help students find aspects. And if you tap on an aspect, then it isolates just that one aspect.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And someone could go through the chart and be able to locate, the semi-squares.
That is an explosion, essentially.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an idea. If you ever.
I love that.
It kind of already exists in an app. You already put it in your app.
Well, yeah, this is the personal tool that I created to do my own readings and to
when is it available to the other astrologers in the room here?
Yeah, I'll send it. Yeah, I'll send you a link so you can play with it.
That's hot. I love that tech. That looks great.
Yeah.
So Patrick says everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. Does that mean anything to you?
It does. It sure does. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess maybe what Patrick's saying there is we shouldn't necessarily simplify astrology to try to dumb it down, but we can use it in its most clear fashion.
But no one's trying to do that, is my point, right? You see very few astrologers moving towards, this is, I think, the point of this topic. You see very few astrologers moving towards simplicity because there's no astrologers that even suggest that that isn't possible or that they could or that it might be valuable. And I'm trying to break the norm and say, at least the way that I teach it, again, astrologic, there is a logic here. And I think once you accept that, then your mind can start to find it and utilize it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there have been a few lessons from today that we all kind of agreed on. One is that it really depends on the inquiry. Where you look at that blueprint depends on what is the person and what is the question. And then, so that's one thing. And then the other one is we want all the data, we want the charts, but we want to reduce noise of, looking. We don't want to be overwhelmed by a million asteroids and trans-Neptunians, all this kind of stuff. We want to feel in control of what data we're looking at and what we're not. and not feel like, because a lot of times when students study it, they're like, oh no, I got asteroids and this and that. We're like, that's just noise. That's just noise, you know. Any other
Well,
points?
I do have one. You know, I've been studying a lot about AI, and one of the terms that I picked up in this book was this idea of developing a feel for something. You know, and I think as an astrologer, we each develop a feel for certain tools, right? And I think when we notice we have a good feel for a certain tools, I think that's where we lean into the data. When we notice we don't have a feel for certain tools, I think that can also be an origin of noise. But it does require working with the tool, being curious, and seeing how it works. It does require time and effort to develop a feel. But I think that should also be an aspiration of knowing you're not really going to know how to handle the data until you've developed a feel for a system that gives you a way to handle that data.
It's so interesting. I'm trying to learn the blues right now. Not trying, like, you know, I'll succeed. I mean, come on. But I will say this. I have all the scales and stuff. I got the data, but I'm still trying to get that feel for it. And so it's coming out clunky and like all this stuff. And it's like, that's a good lesson. All right, Bonnie, this was your topic. Do you have any last comments? Because we don't want to take your topic from you. What else? Anything else?
I would like to know, how do we help our clients not feel wrong for continuing to search, but what else could it be? But what else could it be? But what else could it be? Because I mean, a lot of that is just the human brain does that.
Well, yeah, I think for astrologers, for us to own that the system is kind of broken.
Say more about that.
Well, just when they're looking and they're looking and they're looking, like, to me, I feel an urge to honor that, because I found a system of astrology that worked for me, but there were still pieces that didn't click. But I had to understand the system enough to be able to recognize the pieces that didn't click. So, but if I would have stopped and said, this is 85%, it's good enough, and I would have stopped there, I think I don't want that to happen. I want to encourage people to keep looking. But if they keep looking before they understand what they're working with, then they're going to be looking forever. So it's like, find a system that works and start with, it's like what Andy said, start with what you know, right? Even if it's just sun signs, really grasp sun signs first. And that's not going to answer everything, but be clear on this answers this, and this, and be clear on what are the questions that it doesn't answer, and pick one, and you could go to find that one. And I think building that way, it solidifies what you know, and it allows a basis to keep building on it. Nice.
Well, I have one sentence for you, Bonnie. Seek and you shall find. All right. Okay. How can people find you, Bonnie?
BonnieGillaspy.com is probably the main place. Chartharmony.com for my planetary remediation offers, because, of course, I'm trying to create harmony within the chart. At least I am in my Venus-ruled moon baby self. Yeah, those are the places. I have a YouTube channel, Bonnie Gillaspy Live. I try to live stream. I try to do some activities now and then. My team is cutting up shorts for me, which is great because I don't like to edit and they do. So that's fun.
Nice. And look for Bonnie as she comes back. I think it's next month where we're going to talk about her book, Self-Management for Actors. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you for this conversation. This was a blast. Thanks, y'all.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.